So we're in chapter 24, and Paul has been brought before the governor of the area, Felix, and so have the members of the council of the Sanhedrin. They've come up, Ananias the high priest and other rulers, plus their orator, Tertullus. So they're already bringing up somebody who can speak eloquently and accuse Paul in front of this governor, Felix. And they start off their accusation by ingratiating themselves with Felix, and ingratiating themselves with this Roman rule, which they are actually against. So again, totally trying to side with, if you like, the enemies of the Jews in order to bring destruction to the ones carrying the grace message. They did that with Jesus, they did it with Stephen, they're doing it now with Paul. Same pattern of siding with the Romans against the chosen people of God, the chosen man of God. And so they start off with this ingratiating message, and then they appeal to the fact that the Romans hated dissension in their area or any area. They wanted peace. They needed peace for their whole situation to thrive. Jerusalem was a thriving trade city for them. They certainly didn't want there to be any dissension. And so the high priest and his cronies again accused Paul of causing dissension and rousing up people to create rebellion. So they're sort of accusing him of being a terrorist, in a way, if we put it in today's language. And at the same time, they're saying that he has profaned the temple. And according to their law, according to the Roman rule of law, the only way that the Jews could actually impose a death sentence on anybody was through the profanity of the temple. That was one thing that the Jews could actually insist on somebody being killed for, corporal punishment for. So they bring that in because they really are looking for the blood of Paul. They really want him to be executed. So they give that forward as their accusation, appealing to Felix as the Roman governor to let them kill Paul, in fact. And then Paul also speaks in a different way to Felix, a much more honest way, but still respectful, and saying, you have many years been a judge of this nation, so you will know, therefore, that I have only been in Jerusalem for 12 days. So, and in those 12 days, I went through a ritualistic purification process, and I entered the temple completely clean. And I never took in any, I did not profane the temple in any way, and there's no way that they can prove any of what they're now accusing me of, because it's a lie, it's false. And he's also saying that I am worshipping God of my fathers through the law and through the prophets, as exactly as my fathers have done, and I am standing up for the resurrection of the dead, just as my fathers have said, so that he's not going against the law or the prophets in any way, but he's following them through, and that there will be a resurrection of the dead, both of the just and the unjust. So that means there's going to be a judgment against those who are coming against God, as you know. So there is a judgment coming, and I suppose he's putting it there to sort of say, be aware that there is this judgment coming, and making sure that the people in the council are also hearing that they are going to be judged by God. And so that's why he always strives to have a clear conscience. And again, he's saying, if there's anybody that has seen me do the things that I'm being accused of, why aren't they here? None of these people that are here were actually there, and none of them can say that they have seen me profane the temple. None of them can say that they have actually seen me rouse up a mob. None of them can actually bear eyewitness to any of that. They're just talking falsehoods. And then he's saying again, I am being tried because I have stood up for the resurrection of the dead, and that is what I'm being judged for by you this day. And so Felix actually has some knowledge of the way. He actually has some knowledge of Christian teaching. And then he's saying, so he's going to call for the commander that was back there in Jerusalem, and then they'll look at it again. But in the meantime, he allows Paul a certain amount of liberty and freedom, so his friends can come visit him, and he's not going to be held in prison. And then they start to, together with his wife, who was Jewish, starts to ask Paul to speak to him, and they start to have some discussions about righteousness, self-control, and the judgment to come. And then it says Felix was afraid. So obviously he's getting a little bit worried about this judgment that was to come. He doesn't want to commit to what Paul is saying and receive this gospel of grace, but at the same time there's some fear in him that he's going to be judged. And it also says he was hoping that Paul might pay for his release, that Paul might actually try and bribe him to release him, and in that case he would release him. But obviously Paul did not bribe him to release him, because Paul had already been told by God that he was going to go to Rome. So he obviously saw this as his way of getting to Rome, and was not about to commit a crime of bribery in order to pay for his release. So he was always and completely honest and lived according to his conscience, whether it would result in him having an easier life or not. He certainly was not going to go against his conscience and bribe Felix to release him. And it finishes off by saying after 2 years, Felix was taken over, or he was relieved. Another governor came in, Porticus, but as a favor, he left Paul bound. So again, even Felix, although he was listening to Paul, hearing what he had to say, he was not going to go against the Jews because he didn't want to incite a riot. So it was because of the Jews that he left Paul bound. Then he leaves, and we go on to chapter 25, and I'll speak to you about that later.